there is a much misunderstood phrase, and that phrase says, "Do not die in their war." I have found that that phrase has been appropriated by those who would counsel doing nothing. So they believe that when I say do not die in their war, I am counseling inaction, disengagement, and isolation. That would be most foolish. Do not die in their war simply speaks to the fact that you must be strategic in deciding exactly what wars you want to fight. Do not fight the one that advances the cause of your enemy. Identify the ones that are in tandem with your own strategic objective and that advances you to the point of liberation. That is what I meant. And I've labored to make this clear on more than a few occasions, but I believe there is a level of intellectual indolence that has crept into our country, a byproduct of the weaponized ignorance that has now assured that when people here do not die in their war and they see the like of me behind Mr. Peter Gregory Obi, they believe that I have stepped into the war belonging to those for whom we should not fight. But what they forget is that it is in the enlightened selfish interest of the citizen to identify what battles advances their collective interest. It is in that identification was found and remains found with the obedient movement. It is not about a person, it is about ideas. The idea of citizenship, the idea of the rule of law, the idea of transparent elections, because citizens who are ruled by law are able to freely choose not just who to elect, who to rule over them or lead them, but those who should determine the structure of their country and exactly what should be happening going into their future. You do not affect history by staying out, criticizing everything, offering nothing as alternatives. Belly acres do not affect history. Those Nigeria would routinely silence found their voices in him. Abiola caught popular imagination. So he ran for the presidency. You should read up on that man. That me and you are able to speak the way we are speaking today, in spite of the many ugliness of what we call a democracy, is because of him, regardless of what Obasanjo and all the other ones who came after him might have done to tarnish his image or to diminish his status. He is the father of anything called democracy in Nigeria, and we don't have one yet. But we'll talk about that later on. He ran. And in running, he picked another Muslim, Papa Gana Kengibe Kanuri, as his running mate. This went against the grain. But you know what? It didn't matter to any one of us because he wasn't running as a religionist. He was not an Islamist. He was running as one of us. There was a relativity. We were related to him because he felt our pain. That was Moshood Kashimawo Olawale Abiola. We followed him. Nigerians across the length and breadth of Nigeria followed him. We followed him because we realized that if he became, we could become. If somebody like him could become the president of Nigeria, the disadvantaged, the victims of Nigeria, who were not even these many in those days, at least it wasn't this manifest, we felt we could become if he became. So we followed him. And he won. He won in places where his life was not expected to win. He beat his opponent, Bashir Tofa, I believe even in Tofa's home state. Nigerians handed him a pan-Nigerian mandate. So, but I know as a fact that it wasn't Abiola they were afraid of. They were afraid of the people who found their voices and gave Abiola a mandate. Because if they would give Abiola a mandate, their own powers would be lost. The powers of impunity that has preserved the unjust entity called Nigeria was threatened. It was threatened by Abiola's victory. The myth of a country where the South cannot find favor in the North, the myth that have been created to perpetuate the divisions, Abiola broke it. And that was what scared the ones who eventually annulled the election. They were not scared of Abiola, they were scared of you. In 1999, Nigeria was in a bad place. First, we had an interim government. An attempt to pacify the Yoruba was made because they sought to make it an ethnic mandate. Suffice to say that Nigeria went through a period of dictatorship. Not that we're much better now, because we still aren't citizens, but that was brutal. I saw a man loaded into the boot of a car in Abuja simply because he crossed a group who called themselves the strike force. It was the rule of man in plain sight without any pretense. At least they pretend now. That was what happened to us. Until, of course, they killed Abacha. And then they killed Abiola. You know who Chukwumerije is? He was the one the system deployed to make sure that Nigerians reduced what was a cross-Nigerian mandate into a tribal mandate. Chukwumerije deployed propaganda of the vilest sort, vilest propaganda possible, to drive a wedge between the Yorubas and the Igbos, to create divisions amongst the coalition that had handed Abiola his mandate. It was very effective. The morons in Lagos State are currently doing the same with the Labour Party governorship candidate. They're telling you all about it. Bizibo. They don't care where you are from. If you are one of their own, they're fine with you. But that's his own battle to fight. Abiola was killed. And they contrived the 1999 Constitution. And then they went to prison and they brought out the man who had said very clearly, he said Abiola was not the Messiah. I'm speaking of no other person than Obasanjo, Olusegun Obasanjo. He had said at the time, much like this time, unlike what he's saying now, he said at that time, Abiola was not the Messiah. We were not looking for a Messiah. We were looking for one of us to lead us. But Obasanjo knew who the Messiah was, but he himself ended up in the belly of the beast and he was sent to jail by Abacha before Abacha died. So after Abacha's murder and Abiola's subsequent murder, they went and brought Obasanjo out of prison, refurbished him, and presto, they gave us a military president in Agbada to operate a military constitution we knew nothing about. That is the 1999 travesty that we call a constitution. Peter Gregory Obi was one of them, or is one of them, without being one of them. If ever there was a bat, it was a true bat. Because to gain power in Nigeria, you have to be willing to crack nuts. To then gain power and use the power to serve the people is a most unusual thing in our environment. But Peter Obi was governor of Anambra for 8 years. And all the records says He did a fantastic job. I never knew him personally, and I never met him until sometime last year. So I have no knowledge of his person. These are the testimonies of those he has worked with. And these are his public records. The people testified to the fact that he served them. And then he was bold enough to come out and tell all of us, if you can trace a couple of government money to me, I'll stop my campaign. That was unusual in this environment. It's extremely unusual. I'm not looking for a saint to lead Nigeria. I'm looking for a leader, somebody who knows where he's going. And the man appeared to be manifestly clear as to where he wants to take the country. And he has a record that says he has done it before at that macro level in Anambra State. And then I look at his biography. I see a man on a mission. Every opportunity to stain his own image in public office, whether that was political office or the many offices that he has held, he has stayed above the grave. Abiola was a fabulously wealthy man in his lifetime. And from all accounts, Peter Obi is equally a fabulously wealthy man, even though he can be exceedingly stingy in the way he spends his money on himself. It does not change the fact that he's not a poor man. But the key reason why this is important is for you to understand that when a man has learned to govern his avarice, as clearly as Peter Obi has learned to govern his avarice, and has a record of the sort that he has placed in the public space, it becomes easy for the people to identify with him. But Obi's quietness belies still the same steel that Abiola had in him, and the same steel that eventually provided the leadership that led to his death. Peter Obi is an able man. He was the person they didn't see coming. They had no calculations concerning him, and they couldn't run scenarios about him. But it is inherited in Nigeria. The victims of Nigeria, those you would never have heard in Nigeria, the silenced in Nigeria, the disadvantaged in Nigeria, everybody who has been dealt with by Nigeria found common purpose in his candidacy. The subjectivization of the truth and the ethnic hate mobs that you see out there, they were out there in the days of Chukwumerije as well. In the place of Abacha, this time around, we have Bola Ahmed Tinubu. In the place of Buhari, and in the place of Maradona, Ibrahim Babangida, we have a Buhari in office today. And yes, OBJ remains OBJ. Only difference this time around, I got the answer to the prayer I said about 4 or 5 years ago. I prayed at the time that may God grant Obasanjo the grace of long life and good health, that he might live to see the unraveling of the empire that he helped to build on the foundation of lies. That empire is dead now. In one way or the other, it will be buried. That Obasanjo now suddenly becomes the truth teller, and he's telling the truth. And the truth is not devalued, even in the mouth of a liar. It's pleasing to see Obasanjo telling the truth. Obasanjo demanding that people stand up for their rights. But it should be instructive to each and every one of us. Lives endures in cycles. And it is the same for nations. We are the creatures in time. We will live and we will die. Nations also die. Nations also die. But nations are built only on truth, if they must endure. If Obasanjo had a legacy of good elections, if he had left good elections behind, others would have been forced to build on it. He did not. But in spite of that, we who are here now, we have a duty to refuse to normalize these attempts at stealing our free will. Because if we fail to do so, understand this. Justice is the first condition of humanity. And you cannot have peace in the absence of justice. The correlations between June 12th and the 25th of May are glaring to see for those who care to look. It is only those who have found comfort in ethnic chauvinism, in lying to themselves and believing that by profiting from this fraud, they wouldn't have normalized evil. Because I assure you, if you applaud injustice, be careful. It's like taking a pee at the beach. One moment, you're crapping all over the poor crab. You're peeing all over him. The next moment, the wind is bringing your pee in your face. Be careful not to normalize evil. Bola Ahmed Tinubu's attempt at grabbing a stolen mandate is evil in the extreme. It dehumanizes those who stood in the rain, in the sun, to vote. A nation cannot be bought. A presidency is not for sale. And if you have in any way helped or sought to help to normalize this, remember, we will tell your history too. We will tell your history. History would have a say. Those who fail to learn the lessons of their history